All right, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I was thinking that, oh yeah, I've been talking in terms of like the um action versus like state of being. So I've been talking to my therapist lately, and he does like dream analysis and like symbolism and Jungian stuff. And um one thing I was talking about that I'm experiencing right now, that I experience a lot is this sense of I compared it to like I'm looking for a target. Like I'm looking to um go after something. Like I need a goal, I need something to chase, I need something to like track down. And I've started using like really like primal images. It's like a jaguar or a leopard, like just looking, waiting for like the gazelle to take off and then to just start chasing after it. Like there's this sense of even with like even right now, like I don't have like any emotion I can point to. Um, but there is kind of this weird physical sensation I have in my head where I'm kind of scattered. I can't quite uh, think clearly or talk, but I'm sort of like waiting for an action. I mean, it's a very like strange like thing to articulate. And that's sort of the sense I have all the time is like this looking, watching, listening,
Hmm.
um, looking for something to like chase down or go after. But one of the comparisons I had with him was like, it seems like other people are just like the gazelle, like they can just like sit around in the herd, just eating grass. And like I can see that they're getting sustenance from eating grass, but I have no idea how you could eat grass and enjoy eating grass, and just like sit around with people and like that's like your whole life. Like you just like follow the herd, the seasons come, there's the rain, so now you move with the rain or whatever. And then you all just like huddle together in this field and are just nibbling, and you can kind of eat anywhere. Like you can eat anywhere. There's something to eat anywhere. There's like something emotionally fulfilling or something fulfilling for them anywhere they go. Especially as long as they're with people. If they're alone, they're freaking out and they're losing their shit. But yeah, they're kind of just good otherwise. And for me, like it's seeking, it's like hunting, like it's tracking. Like there's some smell that I like pick up on, something that kind of connects my focus, my interest. It isn't that like intuitive like haze or whatever. Like it is this spotlight that I'm like trying to zero in on. And if I don't have something to like chase after, then it I just yeah, it drives me insane. But I don't have any problem like being, I can be alone for very long periods of time. I cannot like talk in conversations and be fine. A lot I don't need to like check in with people regularly. But I also do enjoy like the I do enjoy the interactions too. Like it's and even lately, so like most of my life I've spent like I could be very like daydreamy and get lost in my head, and I kind of would compulsively throughout school and work and everything. um I just paying attention was difficult and often like not interesting, and I could kind of listen casually, but in my head I would just start going off into more of a fantasy land. And as I've gotten older and I've had to like be more practical about my life, I can't really do that anymore. But I also don't like get any fulfillment from it anymore. So like even just like lately, I I started taking kickboxing classes. I started taking jujitsu classes. I started skateboarding. I'm going skydiving next week. Like I just like every time I get bored, it's like it's claustrophobic, like it's infuriating. Like I just start like raging in my mind. I just want to explode. Like it's just I need the stimulus. I can't just sit there and do some lawn work or whatever. Like it feels like it's horrible. Like it's just a horrible thing, and it's like explosive. And having just like chit chat with people, yeah, it just drives me insane. Like I need some like surge. Or so it's just I don't know. And it's like I've actually so I think this is interesting. Just another little diversion before we get into what you mentioned. The People talk about like psychopaths being narcissistic. And in my experience of like reading about that, researching it, and my own reflection, I feel like personally, the term narcissist shouldn't actually even apply to psychopaths, that they're actually on opposite ends of the spectrum. And that when people reach the extremes of extreme narcissism or extreme psychopathy, there's like certain affects that do look similar, but fundamentally, the way their brain is processing information is quite different. Like in particular, like when I see with like narcissism, like it is this sort of thing of pulling the wool over your eyes. Like
Mm-hmm.
I am the greatest, I'm the best, everybody loves me, obviously. And as long as you guys just sit there and let me say that and act like this, then it's true. But if anyone disagrees with me even slightly, man, they will just like flip out. They'll like blow up. They'll lose their shit, or they'll collapse into being just this helpless little victim that's crying because blah, blah, blah. You know, you said something and now everybody feels sorry for me. Like it's this huge thing. And from my perception of people who are on the psychopathic spectrum and wherever I'm lying on the various spectrums, uh a lot of that, like, that doesn't matter. Like we can kind of just we can have like an internal sense of like being better than people or being the best or I'm going to be the best, but there isn't this like you can also like insult me or praise me or do different things. Like I don't know, it's not a huge deal. I also don't need people to know and to like validate it. As long as I can do what I want to do, then I could do what I want to do. Like you can all think whatever you want to think, it doesn't really matter. I got what I came for.
Yeah.
You want to go run away telling your friends a story about blah 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 this and that, like okay. Whatever, live out your fantasy, bro. That's your movie. um
Yeah, that is funny how like this yeah, a very good distinction I think between psychopaths and narcissists is psychopaths may have their perception, I don't know, like all personality disorders have distorted views of reality, right? And so people may think, oh, that psychopath is not the best, like that psychopath is delusional. You could still think that they're delusional, and they do tend to think that they're the best or whatever. That's the thing that's common with psychopaths and narcissists. But I think you pointed out a really good distinction is that psychopaths do not need the validation of others. They don't need to have other people agree with them. So I think that may be a little distinction. It may seem like a little distinction, but I think you're right. It actually manifests itself as a really big distinction because narcissists will do essentially anything then, since they do need that external validation, they do need people to agree with them or at least not disagree with them, then they'll violate anybody's personhood, autonomy, whatever, to get people to do it, like fall in line or else, whereas psychopaths, they're certainly capable of doing, equally bad things, but they wouldn't do it for that motivation because they don't need the validation, the external validation of whatever, even if it's a delusional belief. Um, they can say it, but they don't need you to agree. So I think that's nice, is that in some ways narcissists seem worse to me because they're delusional. Like they can both be delusional, sure, and they can both be delusional in narcissistic ways, that are self-aggrandizing. But the narcissist does need that cooperation and will enforce it, and the psychopath doesn't. And so that's nicer to me.
yeah, and the narcissist too will like lose it over very little
Mhm.
things. I mean, it is like you don't smile at them and suddenly that's like a deep personal attack. That is like you are completely undermining their whole identity and how important they are, and you're acting like they're worthless because you didn't smile on them or because you didn't laugh at their joke.
Mm.
Like it's the end of the world. But for the psychopath, it doesn't seem like that. I mean, it's like who cares? Like that guy didn't get it. I don't, whatever. Just on to the next thing.
Right.
Um, and I feel like they're operating. Both are considered to be uh lacking empathy, manipulative, and it seems to me that I feel like they're both, I feel like actually like narcissists and psychopaths are almost like experts in only one type of empathy and then have a huge deficit in the other. So it seems like psychopaths have like extreme cognitive empathy, but almost like no emotional empathy. And narcissists are the opposite. Like they have extreme emotional empathy, but very little cognitive empathy. Um, and so it's like they have to mentally have a fixed notion that I am best, I am better than other people, I deserve this, I deserve that. And that's to like maintain the fact that emotionally they're so fragile. Like their
Uh-huh.
emotions are very flexible. And if you say anything that, goes against that mentality, they lose it and they have to enforce it. Um, Whereas like the psychopath can mentally take on a lot of different like perspectives or play to whatever people are doing in the situation, um, because their emotions are not like reacting. Like they're ultimately seeking, their self-gratification, kind of the outcome-oriented, transactional kind of situation. So it's like, whatever you need me to think, bro, sure. Like I'm gonna,
Yes.
I already know what I want. I'm not gonna tell you that, not gonna reveal that, gonna say whatever you need me to say, and then I can like get that. And I mean, it seems to me like, in that way, like psychopaths are like highly individualistic and narcissists are highly communalistic. They need this circle around them. And I think there's kind of this irony there where, because the narcissist is so sensitive to the feedback of others, as an individual, they enforce like a really strong, basically kind of social environment. Like these are the rules. Everyone has to talk like this. Everyone has to go in line with me. And that makes it seem individualistic. But really, the psychopath is actually way more individualistic because they're like, look, I'm not taking any of this personally. I'm just going to kind of go after what I want. So I can work with whatever you guys are going with, and then I'll just find like my game in that or my target in that.
Yeah, and I think it's because narcissists, like a quick maybe explanation cause that, in my humble opinion, is that narcissists, they see everybody as extensions of themselves. So they can never not care what other people think about, whereas psychopaths have like really no, they don't see anybody anything as themselves, not even them. They don't. So it's like the narcissist has just kind of cast such a wide net of identity, being like, you all are also me, and that's why I'm so caught up and care so much about what you guys think about me, or what, how you act, etc. And then the psychopath is like, no, nothing's me, I'm a cipher, I'm a mist. So, the an interesting kind of funny story about what you said about narcissists and like kind of their emotional reactivity is, one of my friends, there's like a family video of her brother who kind of seems this way a little bit. And it's like, oh, the family video is like of him as a very small child, and it's old. So it's like, oh, did you spill the beans? You spilled the beans. And his reaction was like, instead of like, yeah, I'm sorry, I spilled the beans, it was like, well, how would you like it if you spilled the beans? Where it's like, look, I'm also a victim here, because how would you like it? You would also be real sad if you had been the one who spilled the beans, and it's like, wow, okay. Another thing you said about, so the gazelle thing kind of reminded me of kind of like this, like, sense, how the phrase, like, when you're a hammer, you see everything as a nail.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I like to think of like the psychopath brain really is kind of like taking inputs and then spit out outputs, kind of like problem solving. I think tends to be that way, for a lot of different reasons. And I think one interesting thing is like, I don't like to take bass solos in general, jazz bass solos or whatever, but I especially don't like to take them when there's no real structure. The bass solos I love to play are like when it's like the chords are changing like every two beats. Like it's very fast and the chords are changing every two beats, because then I can just like pick up notes from the chords. It's super structured. It's just like solve the problem of playing notes, in this chord, and then transition, like play the leading notes that go to the next chord. And that's like just fun and great. But then if it's just like modal jazz or something where it's the same chord for like a minute, I'm like, I have no ideas. I don't know what to do here. This sucks or whatever. Yeah. So it is kind of interesting where other people will be like, oh, no constraints. I can really stretch out here, lay out here or whatever. Or not lay out. Layout has a different meaning in music, but I can really, explore some great thoughts that I have. And I'm like the exact opposite, because I'm like, it's easier for me to solve the problem than it is for me to be like, you know, what would I like to say or express in this moment?
Well,
That's a harder thing.
that's kind of crazy you said that. I definitely like I connect with the solo thing a lot. Like that's how I have a similar thing with guitar solos. And oftentimes when it is just like open jamming, like just jam for on it, like I kind of just will run through a few things, and often like like people will describe it as like you kind of like blew your solo like too quickly. Like I just go to like the most extreme thing you can do, the thing you're supposed to like build up to right away. And then I'm like, all right, well, that's it, guys. Like, you know, on to the next thing. And
Yeah,
people are like,
like
nah, man, we want to like jam on it. I'm like, I don't even know what the hell are you talking about? And there's like this, it is that like, yeah, it's like solving it. It's like figuring it out. Like there, and it's kind of like weird, you know, like psychopaths are like considered to have this like disdain of like structure and things like that, but there is this level where it seems like they work with structure well when there is a space for them or a specific task at hand.
mhm.
Because I've had this issue too where like talking to people who I consider like more empathy, they like really they are super sensitive to any kind of like control. Like if anyone takes the lead or is like deciding to this is how we're going to do things, like being a planner or you know, not just giving them that free range to just like feel it out however they want, they like really start to clam up quickly. And it blows my mind because I'll just like throw out ideas of like, oh, maybe we could start a band like this and this, and
Mm.
I'm not fixed to any of what I just threw out. I'm just thinking like that's a good starting point. And they all like pull back, like everyone's just like like it, like just the, and that they will they'll always emphasize this thing of like, well, you know, I want us to like feel it out together. Like, you
Uh-huh.
know, we should just feel it in the moment. Let's just see what happens, guys. Let's just start trying stuff and see what happens. And I'm like, well, you got to start somewhere. You have to like pick a thing. And if you're just not ever like working on a thing, that's never going to go anywhere. Um, and they just want to like feel it out. They want to be in the moment. They want to figure it out. I don't know. It's strange. Like it's kind of this. I don't know. I guess maybe they're not even figuring it out. They're it's feeling it out. They want a space where that's what they can just feel out who they are. Um, and I mean, in a ways, like oh, okay, I've always thought it was weird how like people will talk about the military and like going into boot camp and like how stressful it is being around like drill sergeants and stuff like that. And that always kind of confused me because I was like, yeah, they're yelling at you, but like you're being trained for war. And also like they're doing it to like toughen you up. Like the intensity of everything has a purpose. So therefore, like who cares, you know, it doesn't, you know, it's not about you. It's about like you're literally going to be shot at. Like there's going to be bombs dropping. You're going to have to kill people. Like you just need to get used to having to like, you're going to have to scream over gunfire. Like, you know, carrying hundreds of pounds of equipment and things like that. Like that's just something you're kind of like just getting used to the sensory of it, you know? Um, and yet just having someone in their face screaming at them, even though they signed up for it, they had to get like blood tests and go through like multiple interviews and get on a bus and go to, you know, wherever training camp. Um, it like yeah, it hurts so much for them. They're just like fuck that guy. He doesn't know me. That asshole. You know, blah 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 blah. They think they're so shit. You know, like I don't know. It just gets into like their whole identity. And yeah, I guess like yeah, I don't know. It kind of like it can. I mean that's the thing too. Even like there's the level of like I'm totally delusional on some other in some way that like I can't even fully see that like is so I mean even like not even understanding like a lot of social norms or picking up on cues or just being able to go with the crowd, um under needing to know why, like why are we wearing these clothes at this place and we have to wear our hats and we have to wear it this direction, and we drink this at this time of the year but we don't drink that at that time. Oh my god, that's been infuriating whenever like I just you like have I don't know, um I don't know. It's like if you have like eggnog in the summer and everyone's like, "What? That's
Mhm.
impossible." And it's like, who gives a shit, man? It's eggnog. I like the taste of it. I'll drink it in the summer. Like, you know, it doesn't matter. But for other people, it's like a conniption.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is kind of interesting, like it gets again to this idea that people aren't it like the facts are not just facts. What we talked about earlier. The facts obviously have some sort of other meaning to them. Like there's other stuff kind of going on where you realize, eggnog is not for just drinking for pleasure. It has like who knows how many other meanings to it. Nostalgia or otherwise, or, this is what we have to do. Even people who like their drinking routines, like it's not enough for a lot of people to kind of get like drunk or whatever. They have to be like, man, I follow this kind of funny Instagram where it's like, this is what it always happens when like women go out for girls' night. And the server asks, "Hey, do you guys want one more drink?" And then they're like, it always goes like this: "Should we do it? Should we do it? Should we do one more?" Are we going to do one more? And kind of like have to go through this process. It can't just be like, oh, yeah, I personally would like one. It's like, I need to get everybody on board. We're all going to do one more or we're not. And I'm sure there's logistics about it, but there's also probably like, you don't want to be the one drunk person or the whatever, like this kind of communal, like in order to kind of like maintain this communal identity. Yeah, there really is like a lot of kind of what would be a good way to put it? Almost like ritualistic behavior. Like we have
Oh
to,
yeah.
for this god of, like our identity as being, especially like being part of a community, then we need to engage in this ritualistic behavior to, to like pay tribute to this illusion that is, that we're all just, this is just reality, is that we're part of this community and there's really nothing that could kind of change it, or we're not choosing it. These are not our choices. This is just what happened. This is just how we flowed into here. We just felt it out and this is how we arrived here, kind of thing.
It's crazy you said that about like the drinking rituals is so I never drank at all until I was 21. And whenever I did, like I would drink rarely and it would always like make people like deeply uncomfortable. Because I would just order the way I would order drinks and the way I went about it was super functional. So like I would show up to a bar, everyone's just like getting a beer to like settle in, and I would
Hmm.
immediately order 2 shots of whiskey. Um Purposely on an empty stomach so that way it would like hit fast, and then
Right.
I would immediately right after that order another two, but I would also order some food so then I could like kind of like sip on those. Sip is somewhat in quotations, and then I'll eat food, and then I'll just like order maybe like a beer and then water after that. And
Hmm.
then if we're gonna be here like all night because there's a show starting in an hour and the band's playing for a few hours, then I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna like I have like 4 shots in me in like a 30-minute period. I have food and now I have water, so the food and the water will hydrate me, and I can just cruise out on this like being like drunk for the rest of the night.
Right.
And then I don't have to get to the end of the night and be like, oh shit, like we just took shots like half an hour ago. How many beers have I had? Like I gotta add it up, driving home drunk. But everyone would just look at me mortified, like, but it was like, you just went from like having like never drinking to like now he's just like, yeah, slamming whiskey like it's nothing. And but then I would only drink like once a month. Um, and I would go home fine. I would be sober, never have like a hangover or anything like that. Everyone else at that point in the time, like by the time the night ends, I'm the one who's like, you guys are all hammered and like, making out with random people. You're talking about going home, but all of you are like drunk. Like, but I don't know. I don't. It's so like opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I learned like as a prosecutor, like volunteer prosecutor for a hot second, that everybody likes to say, like if you get pulled over by the cops, you're driving, you had been drinking something. Everybody likes to say, oh, it was like a drink, 4 hours ago. But actually, the way that the blood alcohol gets absorbed, it's much better to say that you drank like 10 drinks like the minute before you walked into the car because they have to observe you from a certain amount of time, make sure you don't like vomit or like burp or anything so that it like they get a good reading from your breathalyzer. But everybody just has like these kind of natural things like this is the good thing to do, this is the natural thing to do. And often it's like the opposite of like what should be happening. Like they think, oh, it would be crazy, you know, to do what you did, the 4 shots, but it makes like actually the most sense. But they're like, well, we can't think about drink. We have to kind of pretend that we just stumbled into drunkenness, not that we chose it, right? Like that's just how the night went. You know, that was just how we just felt it out, right? And that was just how it happened, you know, as opposed to you who's like the identity of acting being like, no, I'm
Let
choosing
me do the math
drunkenness.
real quick.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that stumble into shit. Oh my God, that drives me insane.
Hmm.
That I can never like click in with that and just go along. And yeah, it just seems like that does make sense though, like what you said about like if you just had the drinks, like it hasn't set in yet.
Hmm.
It hasn't measured it all. So if like you did a breathalyzer, like yeah, you're gonna be good.
But nobody would say that because even though that would be almost certainly get you out of a DUI, saying exactly that thing,
Yeah.
because there's no way they can prove like when and how and whatever, right? No one would say that because it just seems so like bizarre behavior, you know. Like they're afraid to kind of like get out. I think they want the cop to be like, oh, yeah, just a drink 4 hours ago? Oh, man, you're fine, you know, or like, "That's a reasonable thing to do," or something. Like, as long as they kinda just do what seems, typical, natural, you know, in huge, like, quotes. Natural law, that's what they used to call it with, legal realism. Like, we're just discovering law. It's just happening. We have no, you know, that's just like the fact that I decided this way was like decided, you know, by some forces that we're not even aware of. Um, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and there seems like it's the forces we're not even aware of. That's kind of like there's yeah, it gets into that like whole like the oh, it's fate
Mm,
or it's destiny or it's the universe telling me to do this. Um and yeah, I don't know that there's so it sort of seems like okay, that's sort of like I feel like that's like and this is what I find so frustrating about people like that is I am seeing it as like this is a decision you can make, or you can choose or not to do this. You feel like doing this. You want to do this. You are motivated to do this. This is what you want to do and makes you feel good. And now you are mentally just kind of coming up with some bullshit so you can check out and just greenlight the whole thing with, oh, it's just, this is how it has to happen. We're just falling in love. It's the universe. It's fate. It's destiny. It's a higher power. People will even bring that up like out at like drinking or some weird shit. Like you'll go
mm,
out for like a bar or something. Um, and I don't know, like I can't even that's the thing is like it's so nonsensical to me. I like have such a hard time remembering examples, but like it's almost like the coincidence they'll like meet someone or you're at like a bar with someone or hanging out and someone will happen to have the same name as like their mom or something, and
mhm.
all of a sudden it's like, well, now the fact that your name is also April, um, that now I can just make up all this bullshit of something about tonight's gonna be different, and yeah, and it just seems to me like it's just like so uh selfish and like lazy and delusional on their part to just decide like that's how it's going to be because I feel that way, and we're not even going to like talk about it or work it out or consider the options. Like you can't even interrupt. Like as soon as it clicks on and they get that feeling, they're in
Mhm.
flow. So if you say anything that doesn't align with that, it's like putting a brick wall up and they're just running right into it and they just hate you for it.
Yeah.
um and so you need to make sure that you're talking with their tone, make sure you're making all of their inflections. If everybody's, uh, saying really excited and their voices are getting higher in pitch because everyone's getting so hyped up for it. Um, I mean, that's even like with the level of like the way my tone varies all the time. My voice uh, varies a lot, or it'll just be totally monotone. And that's how it's been for a long time, but I've had to like adapt and just learn to take on a certain like tone or voice or mannerisms and figure out like roughly when people are talking a certain way, how to engage with it, even though I'm not feeling anything for them or feeling what they're feeling, talk with that inflection, so that way they don't feel like violated or disrespected or interrupted or whatever.
Hmm.
In order to just keep the interaction going, so it doesn't become like antagonistic.
Well, it is kind of like a little bit, you know, not the same, but similar to the narcissist. Like the narcissist requires you to reflect back to them their reality, right? And if that's the kind of the problem with your having your identity as not being acting, where you're kind of like self-aware, because identity based on acting, you can like this like the psychopath, you can just do it yourself. You don't need to require everybody to kind of like be on the same shared delusion, right? But the identity of being, you do, you really do like the girls' night out thing. You do need to kind of be like, ah, we were so bad, we had another, right? As if that was just the communal what had to happen, that was just bound to happen, and it was nobody's fault or whatever, nobody's choice, when really everybody's making a choice. Every single person in that situation is making a choice. So this illusion of no choice is really interesting to and in order to maintain that, this sense that you're not choosing, you're actually in flow, then you would have to have everybody participating, not you sitting there like pounding shots at the beginning. Or you kind of being like, hold it, it doesn't matter that this person has your mom's name or whatever, that has nothing to do with it. You can't really have people dissenting, and having their own perspective about things. I think that as we kind of talk about it, because I did, this whole conversation I've been thinking maybe the identity of being's better or whatever, but I think that is the one thing that makes it one of my favorite words, unsustainable. It's
Yeah.
unsustainable because it is based on an illusion. Not just that, but it's based on an illusion that requires other people's participation in the illusion. It's like the emperor's new clothes, in which everybody has to kind of participate, and if everybody does, then it's like, wow, the emperor had awesome new clothes, and that's just our shared reality now, like, and actual reality has kind of been memory hold, which we certainly do, enough as a society. But if one person, some little kid's like, he's naked, then the illusion collapses, and then we're all left understanding the actual reality, which is, no, we are making choices. You are an autonomous individual with agency, and you chose to have that extra drink, and your friends could have had a drink and you could have said no, right? And that was always a reality, but like people, and I see this, I'm trying to think now, other situations in which people seem to kind of like give up the idea of responsibility. Like that's more comfortable to them, to be kind of like, no. And even you see it too with people who are like, every once in a while, like political activists. Like I have a family member who's like a socialist, and they're like, yeah, capitalism is like, controlling my life or whatever. And I'm like, capitalism just means a free exchange of goods or services. Like, do you mean something else, or like what, like why do you? And it's interesting, the same family member though is like one of these collectors, who needs to have like the merch. I always wonder about this. I just, I went to Coachella last weekend or the weekend before or whatever, and it's who is spending $150 on a sweatshirt or whatever, like, geez Louise, but people do. And it's like, yeah, it's just something I don't understand. But it looks like we have like 5 minutes. Do you have any wrap up thoughts?
Let's see. I guess the only thing I can kind of think of, which is like, I don't know, this is a weird story to tell, but I'll tell it
Hmm.
because it does remind me of this like agency versus state. So one time I like to go hiking, but I get bored going on the same trails over and over. So like I would drive around the area to find new places, and I went to this spot where I thought there was going to be like a good hiking area. And I pulled up, and there was just a lot of like cars parked there, and it was kind of weird or whatever. I don't know. It seemed like I didn't see a lot of people around. I get out, I start walking off into, the first section is like a park, so it's like a mowed lawn with some benches, but then it goes off into the woods. And um, as I was, walking into the woods, this man starts following me. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. But I guess he's just like, he's also going on the trail.
Uh-huh.
And eventually I get to a point where I'm like, okay, this isn't a trail. Like, this is just like, there's like trees knocked down everywhere. Like it's not like clear, the path isn't cleared at all. Like, what is this? And he keeps following me and he eventually gets to me. And it turns out I just stumbled into a spot where like random dudes meet up to like hook up.
Oh.
Yeah. So he was like, you want some action? And he was like, he kept saying hand net. And I was just like, yo, what's up, dude? How are you doing? What do you do for work? Like,
Mhm.
I was just kind of like the get to know you thing. And he was like, yeah, he was like, you want to get some action? He was kind of like really like his energy was really intense. Um, and also like very quickly was just like, oh, it's okay, man. I understand. You didn't know. Good thing
Mhm.
one of the older dudes wasn't out here. Like they would have raped you.
No way.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, bro, I'm gonna start walking out of these woods. And I get out, I leave. It's like all fine. Like he very much wanted to like persuade me otherwise, but I didn't have any issue. But as I was like telling this story to other people, they were so confused as like how to react because throughout the whole experience, I was like, what is this? Oh, this is what it is. I just start laughing. All right, well, I'm leaving. I can just do that. Um, yeah, he really wants me to, but that's not a big deal. Like I'm just gonna leave. Like, I kind of laughed it off. I just had some small talk with him. He kept kind of trying to like influence me. Had very like beady eyes. Like he was very much like zeroed in on it. Um, and other people like yeah, like because I just like talked about it as though like, oh, I could tell like he had this vibe, and then I've realized, and then it was like a dumb mistake, and then I just like left or whatever. Um, I don't know. I assumed that like they would have felt like so emotionally uncomfortable and it would have been really awkward and like intense. But I was even explaining to them, I was like, well, he was quite a bit shorter than me. Yeah, he was older and a bit stockier, but there was also other cars there. So it's like not like he can like victimize me really. Like there's just too many witnesses. I'm bigger, I'm younger, I'm not really strong, but I can run fast. So there's no problem here. Like I'm gonna get out.
Mhm.
And then everyone else was like, oh, okay, whatever. Like they were like more uncomfortable hearing about my experience of going through that than I was going through the experience.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I can't imagine how so many times throughout my life it's been that experience of like, oh, this happened, I can do this, I can choose that, now it's like this. And even if it didn't go well, like it's still like okay, well, now it didn't go well, I'll just do it differently next time. But everyone wants to like, well, you have to like, it's okay, it was okay that happened, it's okay you didn't understand. It's so like they're always trying to like validate some feeling or like make me feel more like accepting of it, even though I didn't, like I was fine with it to begin with. you
Right.
know it just happened, and that's how it is.
Yeah, I do feel like there's something to that. I'm not sure, like, I have a take. I'd be really interested to see people's comments in the comments about, what their take would be. I do agree that there is something up here about the story that seems related to like the whole agency and like the identity of being like, because this would be a flow thing that happened, but it doesn't fit their paradigm of flow is always good and right and natural. So they had to be like, oh well, sometimes the flow gets messed up, when really it's like, no, it's always been your choice and it was your choice. But yeah, I could see it. But we are 5 seconds or 15 seconds gone. But thanks so much for chatting with me.
Yeah,
And
it's great talking to you.
yes, hopefully we'll get you back on once I figure out the whole Zoom thing.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Talk to you
See
soon.
ya.